Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Yeah.
Okay. Welcome everybody to this Sunday afternoon Bhagavad Gita talk. Just do the invocation. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're reading from the Bhagavad Gita, and it's the 14th chapter, the three modes of material nature, and it's text number 4. So I'll recite the verse, and then we can maybe move on to the translation and purport. Sarvayonishu Kanteya Murtayak Sambhavanti Yaha Tasham Brahma Mahadyoni Ham Bija Pradapitaha. Sarvayonishu, all species of life. Kaunteya, O son of Kunti. Murtayaha, forms. Sambhavanti, they appear. Yaha, which. Tasham, of all of them. Brahma, the supreme. Mahatyoni, source of birth in the material substance. Aham, I. Bija Pradaha, the seed-giving Pita, or Pita, father. Translation. It should be understood that all species of life, O son of Kunti, are made possible by birth in this material nature, and that I am the seed-giving father. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. In this verse, it is clearly explained that the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna is the original father of all living entities. The living entities are combinations of the material nature and the spiritual nature. Such living entities are seen not only on this planet, but on other planets, on every planet, even the highest, where Brahma is situated. Everywhere there are living entities. Within the earth there are living entities, even within water and fire. All these appearances are due to the mother, material nature, and Krishna's seed-giving process. The purport is that the material world is impregnated with living entities who come out in various forms at the time of creation, according to their past deeds. Om Gyantimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manavishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swavatantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Siyuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Shri Rupa Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivi Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakam Vitam Cha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastude Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavanishwari Vishvanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Manchkalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vayevacha Patita Anam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Vasudeva Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So it's Father's Day today, I understand. It's the day when everybody remembers their dad. And actually, when I was young, there wasn't a Father's Day. It was just Mother's Day. So things are improving. Actually, every day should be Father's Day. Does everybody agree? And, we have one Supreme Father. This is Krishna. So Krishna says, Ham Sarvasya Prabhava, Matak Sarvam Pravatate, Itimatva, Vijantimam Buddha Bhava Samam Vitaha. He's saying, I'm the source of all material and spiritual worlds. Everything's amazing for me, and a wise person can understand that. So this is Krishna consciousness. And material consciousness means that we don't see anything related to Krishna. And to the different degrees, we actually can see Krishna in the equation. To that degree, we're actually Krishna conscious. So, this is not something we can artificially do. And the living entity has been conditioned to this, seeing things separately from Vinatvam, separately from Krishna since time immemorial. And so we shouldn't be surprised if it's, quite an endeavor to recalibrate and start to see Krishna in the equation. But, if we actually analyze, we can see that this process that we're following is a super express train. We couldn't get anything faster. If we go through the Vedic process, it's like, it's lifetimes, many lifetimes, just to come from the point of being a gross materialist to thinking about maybe there's something better than this, becoming a jnani. And then, many lifetimes in Brahma Samhita, it said they made many lifetimes in drilling the respiration, in meditating, eventually coming to the point of understanding something beyond the body, realization. And out of many such realized souls, hardly one becomes self-realized or freed from the material energy. And then, one who reaches out, maybe he starts to meditate. Now he knows what to meditate on, he becomes a yogi. And if the yogi is fortunate enough to take, the association of a Vaishnav, he can actually perfect all his activities and make them worthwhile. It's the only worthwhile thing he can do. He can become an advanced yogi, and then after some time he can become an amoeba again, no problem. So, big endeavor. But just by the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and by the mercy of his representatives in the form of Srila Prabhupada, Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, going all the way back to Lord Chaitanya, then, we begin a process where, in one lifetime, we can actually become perfect. And we may question that sometimes because it feels like, sometimes it feels we're making little progress. I remember I was listening to one class in Mayapur. It was probably end of February, March time, just before Gopanim. They have one day which is the disappearance day, I think it is, of Gaur Govinda Maharaj. And I'm not sure whether it's the next day or the same day that it's the disappearance day of Tamal Krishna Goswami. And so usually they play a tape of Tamal Krishna Maharaj, giving a class. And that year I was there, he was giving a class. And, I'm a little bit hard of hearing sometimes. I'll have to get an hearing aid, I think. But anyway, I didn't hear the question, but he said, "Why are you thinking like that?" This was his answer. Why are you thinking like that? He says, "Don't think like that." He said, "Do you think after spending a lifetime absorbed in trying to serve Krishna and give Krishna consciousness to others, that our disciplic succession are so ungrateful that we want to achieve success?" He says, "Don't think like that." And it was really enlivening to hear that, because we're in doubt. Am I actually making sufficient progress? Is Krishna as merciful as he says he is? And we're really seeing things through our conditioned eyes. Atmanam manyate jagat, they say, don't they? In other words, we think everybody thinks like us, and so we'll naturally think that Krishna thinks like us. And what chances would we have of going back to Godhead if Krishna thought like us? Maybe that's some problem. But Krishna doesn't. He takes every little, what's the test? What's the sloka in the Srimad Bhagavatam which proves Krishna's mercy? Aho Bhakiyam Stanakala Kutam. Bhaki means witch. When Putana, she approached Krishna to poison him. She smeared her breast with poison. And when Krishna, everybody thought, she actually appeared like a beautiful lady, although she was a witch. And so the people in the household, they let her come in and they thought she can feed Krishna. And he said that at that point, Krishna knew who Putana was. And so he took the life breath out of her body. It says, but she attained the position of Krishna's nurse. Krishna's mercy. He takes, somebody who's trying to poison Krishna, he makes them into a pure devotee. So what to speak of somebody who's favorably serving Krishna? We can just imagine what result we get. So, the Bhagavad Gita is meant to bring us to that position that, Krishna is, the Supreme Father, and the Father is known as the well-wisher. Is that right? Is he the well-wisher of the family? Is everybody in agreement with that? The Supreme well-wisher. And so, well-wisher means that he's only looking for the good of the family. And so therefore, in Indian families, it's very close. And, the sons think a lot about the father. I remember I was called, must be in the 1990s sometime. I was asked to go to an Indian funeral somewhere in Lancashire. I can't remember exactly where it was. Blackburn or somewhere like that. And, I was amazed that, the sons, they were actually crying their hearts out that the father had left. And I'd never seen anything like it in my life. So yeah, there's that close attachment to the father. But it's not necessarily like that in Western families. In fact, this is just a little bit of a, there's one song when I was a young boy, and their family are singing to the father, "Don't jump off the roof, Dad. You'll make a hole in the ground." They weren't bothered about the father. "Don't jump off the roof, Dad. You'll make a hole in the ground. If you must end it all, Dad, for God's sake, give us a break. Go to the municipal park, Dad, and there you can jump in the lake." So, this is, anyway, this is an extreme. It's not actually like that, but anyway. So, yeah, Supreme Father is Supreme Well-Wisher. But not only that, Krishna is both the mother and the father. There's one prayer in Chaitanya Chaitamrita. Krishna is our father, Krishna is our mother, Krishna is everything. And that's actually the fact. Because Aham Sarvasya Prabhu, everything comes from Krishna. He's both the seed and the yoni. Yoni means the womb. So how is that? Because we can see in creation that is there any female? I say there is actually Lakshmi. But it's explained how creation takes place by Mahavishnu. And Mahavishnu, he impregnates the material nature, the Mahatattva, by his glance. The seed is there. And then from the Mahatattva comes the different primeval or original primary causes of creation. So this is the process. So, in other words, life is coming from life. The original life is Mahavishnu, or the original life is actually Krishna. And then Mahavishnu is an expansion. And he's actually the form of life which impregnates the other energy of the Lord, the Mahatattva. And then, he enters into each universe. The universes are coming from his pores. And he enters into each universe as Garbhodakashai Vishnu, and therefore there's life in the universe. And then he enters into each of his creations, the atoms, and the different living entities as the super soul, Kshirodakashai Vishnu. So there's not one pinpoint in creation where Krishna's not there. That's the top bottom. So how does it work? Prabhupada, he gave the example that, the pants and the coat. This is a simple example. Does the pants and the coat walk on their own? No, they have to actually be worn by somebody. So he says, similarly, this body is actually the soul within the body is giving, form and life to the whole body. And he also gave the example. I had one lecture where Prabhupada was speaking to a newsman. He was being interviewed, and this person had been waiting to see Prabhupada for some time. He was a really nice person, actually, but he was very materially conditioned, and it was very difficult for him to understand this concept of the seed and the womb. I wouldn't say that, but he found it difficult to understand the difference between the body and the soul. And so Prabhupada started giving the example of a car. It said, and there's a driver of the car. And he said, so which is more important, the car or the driver? And, first time around, he got it wrong. He said, the car. He said, no, and he said, just concentrate a little bit, I'll explain. And then he explained a little bit more that, the car doesn't move without the driver. So he said, which is more important, the car or the driver? And he said, the car again. And eventually, after a long time, probably, 5 or 10 minutes going over this, Prabhupada managed to get the point across But then he didn't understand it probably because he says, so if you've got a busload of people, which is most important, which is more important, and all the devotees started laughing, you know. So it's really difficult for him to understand this simple thing. So, you know, this is why we have Darwin's theory, for instance. The natural selection, natural selection means, is anybody aware of Darwin's theory? Have we got any biologists here? Natural selection means that survival of the fittest, you know, the strongest will actually, you know, survive and the weakest will actually not survive. And so Prabhupada said, okay, he says, who chooses? Who makes the choice? Now that sounds to a materialist like a stupid question. But if we think about it, if there's actually a survival of a stronger species, who's actually making the law that makes that work? Why don't the weaker species actually survive? So in other words, there's a law behind that. So, you know, in every case, Krishna consciousness can be applied to, you know, defeating Darwin's theory. Another example, life comes from matter. We've all heard these explanations before, but I'd just like to break it down a little bit, just to actually make it a little bit more clearer, is that, leave it. Life comes from matter. So, okay, Prabhupada said, let's see an example where life comes from matter. He says, you know, you're a scientist, you perform experiments to prove a point. So perform an experiment. He says, first of all, there's observation of something. And then we actually start to theorize what it is. Observation is called hypothesis. And then we have to put it into action, demonstration. Or when I went to school, what was it? It was apparatus. We've got the apparatus, is that right? And then we've got the aim, or we've got the aim first, what we're trying to achieve. Then the apparatus, and then we've got the method, is that right? And then, or the object, and then the method, and then the result, and then the conclusion. He says, but they don't do that. So how can they actually make any claims for anything? Then Prabhupada goes on to say about Darwin's theory. What is material and what is spiritual? What determines whether something is, we see something material or spiritual? And he's on about the deity also, explaining is a deity material or spiritual. And Prabhupada says, if we want to enjoy something, it's spiritual, it's material. If we want to actually use it in Krishna's service, it's spiritual. So this is actually the devotee asked Prabhupada, is everything spiritual? And Prabhupada said yes. So, you know, it's everything. Parasya Shaktir Vividaiva Suryate. You know, there's multi manifestations of Krishna's energy, and they're empowered with a particular quality. That, you know, the Jad, or the material world, appears to be dead, but actually it's spiritual. And so everything is spiritual, even the material body is spiritual energy, which has a different operation. So what about, so we have the example here in this particular verse about, we know that, you know, man impregnates woman, or, you know, bull impregnates cow, with the species that we can actually see by, you know, to be actually animate, we can see that happening, that there's actually a conjunction between the male and the female, or the bija and the yoni. So what about in a tree? One of the devotees asked Prabhupada, what about a tree? There's only a seed. So where's the mother?
Mother Earth.
So that's one answer, Mother Earth, that, you know, we have to have the right living conditions. If we have earth, then a certain type of species. But also within the seed, we have both the living entity. If the seed hasn't got a living entity in it, then there's no question that it'll actually expand and grow into a huge tree. So there's also ingredients in the seed. So they're also the yoni all in one, the seed and the yoni in one thing, or the living entity and the and the facility for him to grow. Any other examples? What about in one purport in the Srimad Bhagavatam? It's talking about the different species and how they're born, right? So in one purport it says the twice born birds. The twice born birds. So I was asking one devotee about that. I said, what does it mean, twice born birds? He says, well, it means women who've been given Brahmin initiation. And I said, no, I don't think it's that, somehow or other. But then I said, I'm thinking about it. You know, what does a bird do? It gives birth to an egg. So that's one birth. And then it sits on the egg and it gives birth again. So, you know, this could be an answer. So, you know, it can become confusing trying to see how, you know, the connection between the living entity, the seed and the yoni are there, but it's in every species of life. And we can talk about Lord Brahma, Aja, he's unborn. So how is that? There's no female there. But, you know, Mahavishnu is both male and female. And so the same as the seed which comes from Mahavishnu, it's got all ingredients to produce Lord Brahma, like that. So two arguments here. So we're moving on to Father's Day now. Did you all get presents on Father's Day? That means no. Anyway, so what is a real father? How do we understand the father? You know, in Srimad Bhagavatam, it gives a perfect perception of what father is. It says, Pita nasasyat. Pita means father. Guru nasasyat, svajano nasasyat. Pita nasasyat, janani nasasyat. Daivim natatsyan napatishtchatsyan. Namochatya samapatya mityam. So, you know, the purpose of father is to actually, the purpose of any leader, the father is known as the natural leader of the family. So the purpose of any leader is to actually guide the living entities that they're taking care of, which is known as a family, to, you know, spiritual perfection. So in this way, you know, Father's Day can be, you know, a way of worshipping the guru, because actually the father is the natural guru of the family. But, you know, if we're caught up in the externals with the body, then it's just like some more examples from Srimad Bhagavatam. It's like the story of King Chitraketu. You know, he was the king of the earth planet. And he said he had millions of wives, but for some reason he couldn't have one son from any of the wives. And so, you know, he was lamenting, and eventually great sage, I think it was Anjira Muni, came, and he asked him what the problem was. And when Chitraketu told him, he asked him if he could actually help. So he gave him a sacrifice by which he would give some remnants of the sacrifice to his first queen, and she would be able to produce a child from that. She would become fertile. And I think we all know the story, but, you know, eventually the child was born and they were in ecstasy. Said they were called he said, there's one thing, the child will be called Harsha Shoka. So Harsha means, you know, it will be a source of happiness for the parents and also a source of distress. So, what happened is that the other queens, when they saw that, they were losing favour with the king because the first queen had got a child and he was more concerned with her and the child, they actually became envious and they poisoned the child. And when, Chitraketu and the king found out, then, they were completely heartbroken. You can just imagine the situation. And at that point, Narada Muni came back. I'll just have a drink. Very important. Where did we get? Narada Muni came back and Anjira, and they started to preach to him about the nature of the soul. But he still wasn't quite pacified, so they explained we can actually bring the life back into the body. And, King Chitraketu was like really interested. He said, oh yeah, that would be wonderful. But actually what happened is that Narada Muni, he entered into the dead body of the child and he actually took the place of the soul. And so from that position, he started to speak about the philosophy of, of life, how, when he said, Narada Muni said, wake up, sleeping child, your mother and father are waiting to greet you. And then as the voice within the child, he said that, which mother and father? I've had millions of mother and fathers. Please tell me which birth it is. And so, and then he carried on with the philosophy, and, everybody in the palace, they were completely, awestruck at what was being said. And, the lamentation gradually subsided due to spiritual knowledge. So in this way, these are very powerful stories to help us understand the nature of the world we're living in. Because although we know these stories, do we actually apply them? It's so easy to, slip back into the mode of, families should be happy, but, just happy families for the sake of happy families. And this is actually, a detriment. So, Prabhupada gave the example that we always, in every family, Bhagavatam gives the example, is that we center everything we do, even the family, around Krishna. And then Krishna becomes prominent in the family. In the beginning of family life, what's it like? It means that the wife is young, attractive, the husband or the father of children to be is handsome and, strong. And so there's attraction there. And then, as time goes on, it becomes more of, you have to do his duty. Not only that, the body, his teeth start falling out. And, the hearing starts to go. And we start to become more susceptible to, colds and flu and things like that. And, when we look at the opposite, the spouse we married, it's not the same person anymore externally, internally the same person, but, so it starts, material nature is meant to actually gradually bring us to the point of understanding that, there's nothing actually permanent in this world, that family really. But then what do we think? What's the next stage? Any answers? We've lost it. We're past it. So what do we do next? What do we do next? I thought I get a lot of reciprocation with this one, but it's like I can hear a pin drop.
What was the question again, Maharaj?
Well, what we do, we put it onto, grandchildren, isn't it? That's stage, we superimpose our youth into, our sons and daughters and their grandchildren. So we live, happy families in that situation. Is that right?
Yes, Maharaj, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. And then, we're not always assured of a first-class son, are we? You know what I mean? It's random, isn't it? Usually it's like father like son, they say, but if you look at, Hiranyakashipu, first-class rascal, he had a first-class Vaishnav son. And then, we got Maharajanga, who was a, first-class king. And he had a first-class rascal as a son, King Vena. And so, King Vena, he was so atrocious that in his boyhood, he used to kill his friends. And, Maharajanga, he didn't know what to do. He tried to actually rectify him in so many ways. And at the end, he just actually packed in. He just thought, I can't do anything with this child. And he just retired to the forest and took sannyas. So, life is, we've got great expectations. There was one, does anybody read Charles Dickens? Every Christmas, there used to be, one of Dickens's stories on. One was called Great Expectations. And so, everybody in this material world, they've got great expectations. But, any moment, those expectations are thwarted. That's the point. And so the only real panacea is if we have an alternative. What alternatives do we have? The present situation is described in Srimad Bhagavatam. What's the basic principle of material existence? Does anybody remember this verse? Basic principle of material existence.
Everyone is thinking, I and mine. How can I enjoy?
What's that? Yeah, are you breaking up?
Sorry, I was just saying everyone is thinking about I and mine and how can I enjoy.
Yeah, but there's something which, that's one answer, but Bhagavatam gives it a little bit more detail. Can you enjoy on your own?
How can I use others for my enjoyment?
So I'm giving you a clue now. So, we've been talking about male and female. So, the basic principle of material existence is the attraction between male and female. So Bhagavatam's giving us that. And by that attraction, what happens? Then there's, as soon as there's connection, then there's offspring. First of all, we're attracted to the body, then we're attracted to the opposite sex, then we're attracted to then all the paraphernalia we need to actually support that. And so, it just increases and increases, and then it ties a hard knot of material existence. Based on this one misconception that, we're actually not the body, that we are the body, and that basic connection between the opposite sex. And so, we'll find that all spiritual processes delimit the connection between male and female. Because as soon as that's not controlled, then, there's no question of making spiritual advancement. There's no question of focusing on the goal of life. We become too preoccupied with our present here and now situation. Even though we have Krishna consciousness, we have the whole process. It's so difficult to practice in that situation. You get up in the morning. If you don't get up early, it's curtains. You have to get up reasonably early, chant your rounds, if you're following the full process. Then after that, some breakfast. And then it's out to work. Then all day, you're preoccupied with your work. You come back maybe 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock at night. There's a few hours left to actually do whatever you need to do. you know, and so, you know, it's very, very tight. And so, you know, Prabhupada gave that we should reduce things to a minimum, to a simple minimum, and then it gives time for spiritual life. But, you know, one other point, actually, many of the dynasties throughout history, what happens to the dynasties? They, especially, I was reading one book, I was starting to read the Quran. I'm not knocking the Muslims or the Christians or any particular, but I was particularly noticeable in the Quran. It's just like a war book. You know, it's like one king takes over and his son kills him. Another, his son takes over one of his friends and assassinates him. Another one takes over and the king from the other kingdom kills him. And it's just like one, you know, generation after generation, they just, you know, the families just killing one another. So, you know, if we become successful, you know, materially in family life, then, you know, it actually increases the chances of it becoming destroyed by so many other untoward things. You know, so, you know, royalty, to be born in Janmaisvarya Shrutashribir, Edamana Manapamam, Nirvarhat Avedartam by Twamakinchina Gochara. Janma, good birth. We're talking about if you were born in an aristocratic family, very dangerous. Janmaisvarya Shruta, if we're born with learning, we become proud. It's difficult to practice spiritual life, but be proud. Janmaisvarya, Aishvarya means opulence. Shribir means beauty. So any of these things, and even if we don't have those things, the tendency is to be, you know, we're still proud. Is that right? Material life, that automatically brings that pride. In England, you say that a pauper is proud of his penny. So it's very difficult to overcome, especially if those things are actually increased by those opulences. So, you know, in that verse, it's explained that we're only able to engage properly in devotional service with a proper attitude if we're a kinchina gochara. So that means materially destitute. So the only process that actually facilitates that is either that Krishna takes everything away. Prabhupada was once meditating on this verse. How does it go? Yasyaham anagrinami harishetad dhanam shanai. Tato jnanam tadantyashat svada jana dukkhadukitam. He said, when I especially favor somebody, I actually take away all their material opulence. So that's one way we can actually practice devotional service. But, you know, by Krishna's grace, by Lord Chaitanya's mercy, by Prabhupada's mercy, we've been given a process which can accommodate both our family life and our spiritual life if we follow their instructions. And if we do follow that process that's given by Lord Chaitanya, then we can remain in an opulent situation and just center everything around Krishna. So that's a great art. And Prabhupada gave us a formula for doing that. Lord Chaitanya gave us a formula. You know, the tendency is to think that this family life is it's too engaging. I don't have time to do my spiritual life. And there was one Brahmin in South India called Kurma Brahmin. When Lord Chaitanya visited South India, he was also, you know, in that frame of mind. So when he invited Lord Chaitanya to his house, you know, they fed him, they washed his feet, sprinkled his water from his foot bath all over their heads. And then Lord Chaitanya, when he was about to leave after they'd fed him, Kumavam actually went after him and asked him to take him with him. He wanted to renounce family life. And so that's the tendency, is we want to, prematurely become absorbed in, an ashram where we can fully, or we think we can fully absorb in Krishna consciousness, but there's no better place than we are at the moment. We're in this place because of our particular psychophysical arrangement. And when we take into Krishna consciousness, Krishna starts to arrange our life in a particular way. And it's not that if we become determined in devotional service, that, everybody leaves family life. No, it's actually arranged in such a way that devotees in this movement, lead their life in an exemplary way in family life. And then what happens from that? It's a perfect preaching tool. People can see it works. They may be attracted to the philosophy, but unless they see a role model, they won't be able to do it. And so this is, our biggest preaching tool is the Grihastha ashram. Who's going to follow, the brahmacharis? I was going door to door in Manchester many years ago when I was there. And one person invited me in. And when I went around next time, he took another book and invited me in again. And about the fourth time I was going, I was explaining all the philosophy to him, how it could be applied in his family life. But then I saw that, he was just looking to say, he didn't, he was looking to say, I can't live like you, because I had to explain the way I was living. And he was superimposing that his life would be something like that. And so I could see that actually I can't really preach to Grihasthas in this ashram. But, you get Grihasthas who are fixed up and brave enough to do book distribution door to door, then so many people will become interested. And then everybody will be celebrating the real Father's Day. When's the real Father's Day? It's Janmashtami, isn't it?
Janmashtami.
Yeah, Janmashtami.
So we'll get more and more people celebrating the real Father's Day. So anyway, I don't want to take your time up any longer. Thank you for listening. If there's any comments or questions, now's the time to ask.
So Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Maharaj, for so many wonderful points you brought up. Really appreciate. If anybody has any questions or comments, they can do so. If you're on YouTube, please type in if you have any question or comment. I can read it out to Maharaj. So we'll just give a couple of minutes because there is a little bit of lag time between Zoom and the YouTube. So just let's see.
Anyway, Krishna, when he comes to this world, he takes the example of a householder. He had 16,108 queens and 10 times as many children. And, in the Krishna book, if you read, I forget which chapter is in the later portion, it explains his daily activities. So if we want to know how to, function as a Grihastha, then, everything's there in that particular narration about Krishna's daily activities, how he used to rise in the morning, he used to, take his bath, then he'd perform his meditation. We do Gayatri mantra, and he'd meditate on himself, and then he'd go and visit all the elders of the family, make sure they were all satisfied. So this is something which is neglected nowadays. Who does that? First of all, he actually takes care of his spiritual life. Then he makes sure that all the elders are looked after. 5 things which have to be looked after in this world. What are they? One is the older generation, the old man. Next one is the children. Next one is the women. Next one is the cow. So these 5 things have to be looked after nicely, and then society functions nicely. And so by Krishna's example, he's setting that example so that we can follow. So, that's our chief aim as devotees of Krishna, is that, we're performing a Maha Yajna, and it's not going in vain. Krishna recognizes the austerities that we're performing. And it's not like, previous ages, everything's condensed. And particularly, what a yajna. We're living out of the holy land. At one time, actually, every place was a holy land. It's just where Krishna consciousness practiced, and that's the spiritual world. But, we're in a situation where we're living in the cities. The mode of life is in the mode of ignorance and passion at best. And we're surrounded by this, and we're still actually practicing Krishna consciousness. And, we're also trying to preach. So, this is not a small thing. So we should take heart that, Krishna's actually witnessing everything. And, there's no greater friend in this world than the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Christians say, no greater love hath man than the Supreme Lord has for the living entity. So carry on with your austerities, and actually it becomes blissful if we actually keep at it. The austerities even become blissful.
Thank you, Maharaj. Yes. So many wonderful points, Maharaj. So I just noted down a few here. One, you mentioned how merciful Krishna is. He awarded motherly position to the she-demon, wicked she-demon, who came to kill him. That's how merciful Lord Krishna is. So he is our father. And you also mentioned from Chitra's story nicely that, when this little boy, Ashashoka, was brought back to life, so he was asking, in which life you are my mother and father? Yeah. So our father and mother keep changing. But Krishna never changed. That relationship is eternal. Our eternal father, he never changes. Right. He continues to be our eternal father. In every life, whichever life we take.
Yeah, we've only got one friend, actually.
Yeah.
Devotees are friends, but he's friends for this lifetime. And but there's one friend who is actually always there. He's always there for us. A good friend is always there for us. Is that right?
Exactly.
In need is a friend indeed.
Yes, friend in need is a friend
Krishna's
indeed.
A friend indeed. Everybody in the material world is in need.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you. Also, you mentioned from 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam that, a guru or a spiritual master, one should not become a spiritual master unless he is not able to deliver his dependents, disciples. Similarly, one should not become a father unless, he delivers his own dependents. So that's our duty. Those who are parents, it's our duty to deliver ourselves and deliver our dependents as well. Isn't it, Maharaj?
That's right.
Those are the few points I'll note it down here. But thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate for enlightening on this subject matter.
Okay.
So I got just a couple of announcements. So tomorrow is Nirjala Ekadashi. Probably you all know that, but just a reminder for those who wants to observe full fast even from water. So that's tomorrow. And on Fridays, we will continue our discussion on Chaitanya Charitamrita. The current topic is the discussion between Ramanand Rai and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So we will continue that discussion. Deenbandhu Prabhu will carry on doing that. Also, Madhav Kumar Prabhu had just reminded me that in July, we are arranging a program by Shubha Vilas Prabhu. You all know that, who is the author of a Ramayan series. Recently, we had him on our show. So this will be a private session in the sense registration is required if someone wants to attend this course. The title of the course is Life Lessons, Achievers Toolkit. Achievers Toolkit. In this, life lessons from the Vedas will be discussed. So these sessions will be on a Saturday in July, on every Saturday, in fact, and there will be registration and a small fee will be needed. So Madhav Kumar Prabhu will be sending that communications out. Just please, keep a look for that. So that's it from me. So thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate, and Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.